welcome to another Plist, the 10 most powerful / influential people in Georgia wrestling. Right now, it is July 13th, 2019. Why do I say the date on these P-lists? Because things change awfully fast. This was a list that I've been working on for a little while now. And again, even the events of last night, Friday night, changed who was on this list and where the positions were and all this stuff. Do I need to explain the 10 most powerful or influential people in Georgia wrestling? I would think I don't. One thing that's noteworthy and one thing that I have a feeling is going to change is that everybody on this list is a man. I'm curious to see if and when I do this list later on, and I probably will, how that changes. First, the noteworthy people that did not make the list, but I felt the need to mention them here. The first one is A.R. Fox. I wanted to put a trainer on the list of the top 10, and he's the one that's trained, or at least indirectly trained, the most people who are wrestling in the state. And that should make you powerful and influential, but A.R. Fox doesn't really embrace the full role, if that makes sense. He doesn't really seem to give guidance to careers. He doesn't seem to, and he's got a wrestling career of his own. So I just really couldn't justify putting him on the list. But he's noteworthy. He's interesting. Perhaps Robert Gibson will get to the top 10 at some point, or QT Marshall, or any of the other people who do training. Matt Hankins, also not on the list, but noteworthy. Of course, his little stunt in a stranglehold helped a lot. I think that he always had a lot of currency with the boys, but I think that move gave him a little currency with everybody that knows what's going on. Just truly amazing stuff. Plus, if rumors are true, then Hankins will no doubt be on the top 10 list for most powerful and influential in Georgia in relatively short order. Another person who is noteworthy because he's one of the biggest voices in Georgia wrestling and wrestling in the area in general. Scott Hensley, who's also one of the people he's kind of the face right now of Scenic City as well. I thought he was noteworthy, and then through Know-It-All, constantly comments on wrestling. If only the jokes weren't so fucking terrible, maybe he would have made the list. Just kidding about the maybe he would have made the list part. All right, are we ready for this top 10? I certainly hope so. Are you ready for my high tech? All right, look for the graphics right around here. Number 10, and you're going to be as shocked as I am with this one. Chris fucking Nelmes. I looked at the list of names that I had, and I didn't want to put him on here. That's just being honest, or full disclosure, as I love to say. But Chris Nelmes, the proof is there. All right, this guy is... what are the reasons? I'll break it down simply. One, he's outlasted his enemies. The people who publicly hated Chris Nelmes the most have fallen by the wayside, but Chris Nelmes remains. That's a sign of power. That's the sign of the kind of influence that he's garnered. He's learned from very, very, very smart and good people. Terry Lawler, for example. He's one of the guys who helped found and start Southern Violence, which, in case you weren't paying attention, their monthly shows, I believe, outdraw Southern Fried's shows. Think about that. Southern Violence, which basically runs in the backyard of Southern Fried, their shows are now drawing in the 250 to 300 range. Southern Fried, outside of outside of Shindig, draw 200. Does that blow your mind? It blew my mind. When I was putting the objective information down next to people's names, I couldn't deny that. And now Georgia World Class Wrestling, which Chris Nelmes is a huge part of, is running in Loganville, which is a site that Southern Fried used to run. So Chris Nelmes makes this fucking list. Maybe I'm going to have to stop making jokes about him. Not likely. Number 9, Brodnik. Right now, in case you've missed the memo, information is key. Moving information around and publicity are key. And you can buy ads, you can make videos and put them online, and all that stuff's great. But at the end of the day, I used to say if Larry Goodman doesn't show up to your show, at some point or another, your show ain't shit. And that's as right today as it ever was. However, Rob, who's been around the scene quite a long time, pictures and as a fan and things like that, his reports not only give exposure to groups that Larry would tend not to go to, his open calls for people to send him show posters and that kind of thing are giving voice to groups that have never had it before, and his voice is more heard than it ever has been before. Is that power? Is that influence? Duh. Yeah. There's a new player in town, and it's not just Larry, it's Rob. And he's going to shows to the tune of 2 to 3 a week and writing show reports on shows that I personally would have never heard of or been exposed to. That's power, that's influence, and it's only going to grow the more work that he puts in. Rob also shows something, but I'm going to talk about it with Larry as well, so I'm going to save it for Larry, but it applies to Rob as well, just know that. Number 9, Brodnik. Yeah. Number 8, David Manders. Yeah, the leader of Southern Fried, who's taken the mantle from Charles, rest in peace, and carried it quite ably. David is a different kind of cat than Charles was, though. He's very much about speaking to his base, speaking to his people. Yeah, like I said, I say many times, and people don't like it that I would bring politics into it, but for me, it's more an indication of sort of the change that's taken place socially and gone to the forefront. But David Manders is a guy who speaks to his base, right? He's constantly putting out live videos that I'm always stumbling across, usually when he's talking about me. Awkward. Talking to his base, constantly firing up, constantly keeping them on board, constantly maintaining everything. Yeah. David Manders has a great deal of power and influence and loves embracing it, loves the kind of feedback that he gets from his echo chamber. That's power, though, right? Southern Fried, they always get the 200 every single show, and David Manders is going to make sure that consistently happens, right? He also puts the right people in place. Can anybody deny that Todd is the right person to run that show and book that show? Of course not. Can anybody deny that, you know, the kind of influence and wide-ranging power that he gives to, say, Doc Brock to continually make videos and do everything in conjunction is working effectively? Of course it's working. David Manders, number 8. Number 7, Dylan Hales. Yeah. Dylan Hales, the power and the money behind Empire, and now the power and the money behind Scenic City, and now he's becoming more public with his opinions as he's feeling more confident. Now he's beginning to kind of spread his wings a little more. I've been told that he's a fantastic commentator on things. Dylan Hales is a person who loves wrestling, and that love is carrying him through, but now he's beginning to learn the game. Now he's beginning to really get out there. Now he's beginning to have his influence felt more and more and more. In the past, perhaps he's butted heads with people like Andrew Alexander when they were doing Empire. I need more money for the shows. We need to control costs, blah, 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 blah. But now Dylan Hales seems to work very much in lockstep with Scott Hensley and Matt Griffin as far as Scenic City goes. I can say whatever I want about how Scenic City appears that it dipped in the third year and how they really need to knock it out of the park fourth year. However, there is no doubt that in terms of harmoniously working together, that it's probably never been better for the people up top with the most influence at Scenic City. Now, we'll see if we can translate that kind of synergy and the comfort working together into a true artistic masterpiece, right? Say what you want, again, about Ace, Josh Massey, who's another guy that could find his way onto this list very easily, by the way. But even the like sort of underlying conflicts and tensions that happened the first two years of Scenic City also made for some great space for something beautiful and something spectacular to emerge. We'll see if Dylan Hales can help facilitate that and make that happen further with Scenic City, but he is the 7th most influential. And one of these guys that maybe flies under the radar a little bit. That's the reason lists like this to me are so important. And speaking of which, if you still don't know, sorry, I'm gonna look all messed up from my workout. Number 6 is Jimmy Ox. And if you're saying, who is that, you're a dumb fuck. And if you're saying, yeah, but what kind of influence, he's just the guy they rent the ring from, you know nothing. Jimmy Ox knows where all the bodies are buried. Jimmy Ox is the guy, if there was some kind of federal indictment on wrestling in Georgia, they would be doing everything they could to get this guy to tell the tale. This guy knows everything. This guy knows everything and everybody going around. Everybody has to deal with Jimmy Ox, directly or indirectly. It's the very definition of power and influence, right? If Jimmy Ox gives you advice, hear it, understand it. If Jimmy Ox gives you a call or a message, you call him back. Power, influence, and that crazy ass voice and accent. Jimmy Ox, number 6 on the list, top 10, power, influence, Jimmy Ox. Plus that sweet ass name. What the fuck? Jimmy Ox? That does not sound like a mob hitman or higher up to you? Come on. Number 5, Bill Behrens. Whether it's guiding the career of Master and the Machine, whether it's stabilizing and holding things down, as Rick Michael has had to kind of pull back for a variety of reasons. Bill Behrens keeps the trains running on time. Bill Behrens has influence. Bill Behrens is the velvet glove on the iron fist in many ways. And that cannot be understated. Plus, Bill Behrens is your connection and your lifeline to the big time. His resume, unparalleled in the state. His kind of calm influence is in direct, it's juxtaposed with the kind of larger than life, bigger than life personalities in the wrestling scene. But without Bill Behrens, what is the landmark arena and the shows that take place there, right? Without Bill Behrens, where is the true lifeline and touchstone to Wildside and Anarchy and all the great influences that they had? Without Bill Behrens, who would advocate for Anarchy and really make it known? Without Bill Behrens, would the connection, the true connection between Southern Fried and Anarchy even really exist? Bill Behrens, number 5, most powerful and influential people in Georgia wrestling. Ready for number 4? You fucking better be. MurderOne. Oh, I can hear the anger erupt throughout the people watching this. People will argue about the results, but there is no denying the influence, right? MurderOne starts shit. MurderOne mixes it up with people. But if this week isn't the ultimate proof of this man's influence and power, I don't know what is. Combat wrestling goes from being a group that was much derided and joked about to AWE does a show that draws less than 100 people, but yet is deemed a success, right? Gunnar Miller, and he mix it up. But the long and short of it is Gunnar Miller's video that addresses the MurderOne situation got more attention and more discussion and more talks about all the wrestling drama and all that stuff. MurderOne mixing it up with Gary Lamb on the same night where, you know, they're doing the comic or they're doing the con thing where hundreds of people are watching AWE. And when's the last time you got to say that? Hundreds of people are watching it. He shows up at Gary Lamb's thing and it's the picture seen around the world. Ooh, I just named it. Ooh, aren't I fucking clever? With him and Gary Lamb, right? I mean, you couldn't help but be mesmerized. Thank you, Scott Steiner. Mesmerized by my beautiful body. Mesmerized by MurderOne and Gary Lamb standing face to face. I love saying this phrase, he's the straw that stirs the drink, right? Where does AWE go from here? Who knows, really? But at the end of the day, MurderOne went from taking them from a joke to not only relevant, but forcing people who should be bigger and stronger and more influential than him to have to deal with him. That's the very definition of power. That's the very definition of influence. Yeah, some people have said AWE has a cult-like following. Well, who's the cult leader? Is it Josh? It's Murder. Number 4. It's getting exciting, right? Chances are you think you know what one or two of these names are on here. But I can guarantee that you don't. Here's proof. Number 3, Cory Hollis. Cory Hollis, he's fucking talent, right? Sure, he's number 2 wrestler in the state of Georgia, according to you, Steve. Why would you put him 3 at most influential? You don't have any other, like, talent down there. Why the fuck would Cory Hollis... Ask anybody who works with him. Who mapped out Jacob Ashworth versus Cory Hollis? Cory Hollis did. Mapped it out completely. Does he work with bookers and with promoters? Of course he does. But at the end of the day, it's this guy's vision. This guy went from being a good hand, one of Jimmy Rave approved, a Behrens boy, right? Always the bass player in the band. Always the guy who did the dirty work, kept the time, but didn't have the true voice. To the guy that has the voice. He's the Bruiser Brody of modern wrestling. He goes where he wants. He has the influence that he wants. He dictates what he's going to do. And he does business. He's not a fool. He's not selfish. But he's learned along the way, right? He got stuff in NXT, but it didn't fucking get him anywhere. Let's be honest, right? Because he was used and abused by different people. He's not going to be used and abused by anybody anymore. Cory Hollis, it's a cliche to say follows the beat of his own drum. And he does follow the beat of his own drum, but he makes other people follow that beat. And then at the end of that song, where he's drumming out the beat, they realize they're all in a better position than they were before, but not the least of which, Cory Hollis benefits. That's power. That's true influence. Number 3 on the list. Could have actually been higher, perhaps, except for the fact that number 2 is Larry fucking Goodman. Not just because of the show reports, though the show reports are the crown jewel in the quiet empire that is Larry Goodman. Ooh, cool little phrase, right? How important is Georgia wrestling history? Incredibly important. Is it more important now than it was when Rich Tate was part of it? Absolutely. Larry, in the last year or two, has felt increasingly empowered, has he not? Yeah? Whether it's covering a story as on the surface silly as the Matt Griffin see Nick thing, but if Larry doesn't highlight it, it didn't happen. He's the record keeper. He's the historian. He's the one. You know, it said history is decided by the winners. Well, at the end of the day, who's deciding the history for Georgia wrestling history? Larry Goodman. That's influence. The podcasts that he helps host and pay for, by the way, gives voice to everybody from Matt Hankins and his crew to our touchstone through Peach State Pandemonium to the old school. Larry Goodman may not be loved by everybody, but he's respected by everybody with half a brain in their fucking head in Georgia wrestling. Yeah. How many wrestlers have I seen that at some point show how much Larry Goodman is in their mind's eye when something happens with one of their matches? Every one of them. How many federations do I know that have asked Larry Goodman to be part of an angle? Why? Because there's an intrinsic value to him and an integrity to him that people want to latch onto and be a part of. And Larry, I'm happy to say, is going out of his way now to accept some of these offers to be a guest. He's going to be on Gunnar Miller's 60-Minute Broadway, for example. And Larry, throughout it all, I think he and Bill Behrens are similar in a way that they manage to be dignified in a business that has no dignity. And we are all the better for it. Larry Goodman, number 2. And not to mention those show reports. I didn't even really touch on those because I think they speak for themselves, but let me say it again. If Larry has never gone to your show or does not go to your big shows, you are not shit. And that site that hosts many of my works as well, if you want to call what I'm doing here on the upward trajectory, and clearly, just in terms of sheer numbers, it is, I have this man to thank, and so I thank him here. But I'm not putting him number 2 to thank him. I'm putting him number 2 because he is one of the most powerful and influential people in Georgia wrestling. Even if he doesn't like me saying it. Number 1. You think you know who it is. Do you? Let's just say you're half right. Number 1 is Gary Lamb. And Dylan. What the fuck, Steve? You can't have 2 people at number 1. Yeah, I can. It's my list. It's called the P list. Not the U list, motherfucker. Gary Lamb and Dylan. Why did I put them both here? Because one is the power. The other is the influence. Gary Lamb, they appear to be a yin and yang combination, right? Gary Lamb is the outward, the vocal, the promoter. Bringing him in, Gary Lamb, the one with the influence of the town, the Godfather of Canton, Georgia, all that great stuff. Dylan, the quiet guy, but here's influence. You know how many young fucking bookers there are? And I know your first instinct when you hear me say that is like, oh God, that's what's fucking wrong with wrestling. There is a youth movement happening on the office end of wrestling, and that has never happened to this scale. You have Cody McCulley fucking booking a show, and you're saying, well, but it doesn't... Fuck. We can argue all day, and God knows I have more than anybody, about what kind of crowds Total Aggression's drawing. The fact is, they're putting more people in that building than the league that hosts in that building. And their booker is... What is Cody McCulley? Fucking 10 years old? Like... Dylan is young, but it's Dylan's connection to DDP that even something as like Big Cass showing up, that's not Gary Lamb, or it's not just Gary Lamb, that's Dylan. those videos that Dylan is putting out about Joe Black, he's producing them. He's filming them. He's the one working for AEW, helping them out with their shit. And he's learning along the way. Gary Lamb, we all know Gary Lamb, right? God knows I talk about Gary Lamb a fucking shit ton, right? And his influence is undeniable. The picture with Murder is a huge moment in Georgia wrestling. But let's not forget that Gary Lamb is there as well. And let's not forget who had to come to whom. Yeah, at the end of the day, Gary Lamb is the most powerful and influential person in Georgia wrestling. But if you don't know that Dylan's right there with him, Gary Lamb loves saying something to people, right? Which is, you're not working for me, you're working with me. And that kind of statement does not hold up if it is not on a fundamental level true. And I think this partnership, which by the way, I was going to do a top 10 combinations in wrestling, like booker-promoter relationship. And guess what? They're number one on that list too. But the more people try to deny Dylan's importance, the more powerful he gets. Last night, folks, they did a show where, let's look at all the things that happened. Murder showed up, smoked the peace pipe with Gary Lamb. That's just a turn of phrase. I don't need fucking messages about what I'm saying. Right? Big Cass is on the show. And they drew more than 400. That's Gary Lamb. That's also Dylan. Is that hard for you to swallow? Is that hard for you to take? Are you wanting to fight it? Well, good. Let's talk about it. But there is no denying. The most influential and powerful person in Georgia wrestling as we speak is not just Gary Lamb, but it's Dylan as well. This has been the P-List.